All right, we're here on the powers of Congress. Now, the United States at this time, they were a little leery of government. They didn't want government to have every power imaginable to do whatever it wanted. So they actually wanted to limit the powers of Congress. So here in Section 8 are the things that Congress can do. This is it. This is the list of things that it can do. So let's look through this list and talk about some of them. Powers of Congress. So Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and the general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. So no matter where you go, taxes have to be the same. They can't say, well, we're going to tax people in Florida more than we are in Idaho. So they can collect taxes, duties, imposts, excises to pay the debts and the general welfare. There's that general welfare again. That is really just intriguing because what does general welfare mean? Well, some people say it's anything that helps. You know, it's just generally helpful. But some people say that that general means it has to help everyone. So government can't say, well, we're going to help only certain groups of people. We're only going to help the poor, or we're only going to help people in inner cities, or we're only going to help people who are sick. Government can only do things that help everyone. They can't single out specific groups. And it's all what that word general means. General means anything that helps, it just generally helps, or does it mean that it has to help everyone, as opposed to specific welfare, which is for specific groups. So general welfare is one of those clauses that a lot of people say, oh, government can do really anything that helps. And some people say, no, that's not what the founders meant. General welfare means that they can only do things that help everybody equally. They can't choose certain groups. So that's one of those clauses that's argued a lot. They can borrow money, which our government is very good at. They borrow money. They can regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. So they're in charge of controlling businesses with different nations, so they can decide how we trade with other foreign countries. And interstate commerce. This is how things are traded between the different states. This one is another one that government seems to take a lot of power with, maybe more than they should. Interstate commerce, which means that anything that goes between states, which is almost anything now, federal government can control. So they'll control things like farming, just because farming will affect how business happens between states. This is also with health insurance. Right now the law is you can only buy health insurance in your state. They don't want to have interstate health insurance, which seems a little bit weird to me, but that's fine. For government, I guess, they can say we can judge what type of business you can do between states. And with the Indian tribes, the government determines how that works. They also establish rules for naturalization. What is this? That's immigration. How can people come into the United States? How do they become U.S. citizens? Laws on bankruptcies. So that there's only one set of laws for bankruptcies through the whole United States. So they decide how people can become citizens and how bankruptcies works. Bankruptcies is when you don't have any money and you can't pay your debts, and so it's just all forgiven. The United States coins money, so it's the federal government that determines the money and regulates the value, and standard weights and measures. So it's actually the government that chooses what measures we have. That's why we still use inches instead of meters, because the U.S. government has decided to keep inches, even though most of the world now uses meters, the metric system. They provide punishments for counterfeiting, so people counterfeit, they do. They establish post office and post roads. So it's the government's job to create roads that go between states that post offices can go on, and to set up post offices through all the country. That is part of their job. To promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive rights to their writings and discoveries. These are patents and copyrights. It is the government's job to make sure that people own their own ideas. And that was for why? to promote the progress of science. So in order to promote the progress of science, the government is supposed to create patents and copyrights so that people, and useful arts, forgot, to promote the progress of science and the useful arts, so that people are motivated to write things and create things because they're going to earn money from it. Nobody else can steal their ideas once they have them. So that is part of the government's job. Move this up a little bit. To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. So they get to create other courts. That is their job. That's why you have other district courts. To define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the laws of nations. So they can do that. To declare war. Grant letters of marque and reprisal. And make rules concerning captures on land and water. So all these things that rule war. It is Congress's job to rule war. To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for longer term than 2 years. So in other words, they can't pass a law that says we're going to have an army for the next 50 years. They can only pass it 2 years at a time. And part of that is because they didn't think they needed a standing army. At that point, there was really not a standing army. You only got an army if there was going to be a war. Now that's not really entirely true now. The United States has an army all the time. But every 2 years, they have to decide how much they're going to spend for the army. To provide and maintain a navy. So their job is to do navy. To make rules for government and regulations of the land and naval forces. So they control the rules of the military. To provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. So they do militia. What is the militia now? That's the National Guard. So their job is to help control and take care of the National Guard. And those are used to suppress insurrections if there's riots or to repel invasions. So they can fight foreign countries too. But there is a National Guard available of people who aren't part of the military all the time. But they can be part of the military when needed. Okay, let's see. To provide for organizing army and disciplining the militias, for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers, lots of that. But they control the National Guard. That's just more of that. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 miles squared, as may be the session of a particular state and accepted of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States. What is this? This is basically that they rule Washington, D.C. They get to make all the rules of Washington, D.C., how it's going to work. At this time, there wasn't Washington, D.C., but they said if there ever was going to be a special place that was just for the government, not a state, but a district of district like the District of Columbia, that it would be ruled by the legislature. And to make all laws necessary for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested in the Constitution of the Government of the United States or in any department of office thereof. So this just basically gives them free to make the laws they need to make this work. Free to make laws to accomplish all the stuff up here, all of their powers. So, make sure that you kind of understand this list of things that they can do. Next, we're going to talk about the things that they can't do.